wake up and she thought he was dead. So she started screaming and crying. My room was destroyed. I could have kicked him. He would have fallen over. I could have got on top of him and started beating him like a chimp, choking the hell out of me, which I was fine with because I wanted to die. All right. Hello. Thank you for joining me once again for another story time. I'm going to tell a story today about a period of my life, lasted about 2 years, where I actually lived in a house. I was not homeless my entire adult life, actually. I considered it somewhat couch surfing, but I did live in this house for 2 years. But it was quite an ordeal, quite a few characters involved in this situation, and quite a lot of stress and strife. So, I mean, a lot of good things happened, a lot of good things came out of it, but overall it was a genuinely stressful period of my life, and in a lot of ways I'm happier being homeless. This is kind of a theme for me, right? It's the same thing with the transitional housing, where it's like some good things came out of it, but it wasn't worth it, and I would prefer to be homeless. But it didn't start out that way with this. I thought that this was going to be a great opportunity for me and that it was actually going to go somewhere good. So let's get into it. So first of all, I was 21 years old. I just turned 21, and I just became homeless in my car for the first time. Before this point, I left my parents' house, but I was couch surfing, and I went from my parents' house in Texas to a place in New Mexico for a few months, to a place in Arizona for a few months, and then to California. And I lived in California with my partner on this college campus. I wasn't enrolled in the college, but the RA didn't really care that I lived there. So I lived on this college campus for a while. And there's some interesting stories from that time too. But when that relationship ended, I ended up homeless in my car for the first time. And that lasted for about a year. I was learning the ropes, I renovated my car, I took the seats out and put the floor in and the hammock and everything, and I made it, what it is now, except it was cleaner back then, and I had something of a kitchen too. But I was getting tired of this, and I was complaining about my situation online on like Discord servers and stuff, talking to my internet friends about it. And one of them offered me a place to live. Apparently they'd done this, his family had done this for family friends in the past, and he found out I was homeless and he wanted to offer me a place to live. But he was in Pennsylvania, so I had to move from California to Pennsylvania. And I stopped in Texas first because I had enough money for gas to get to Texas. And then I stayed there for like a month until I convinced my dad to give me some more money, and I made it up to Pennsylvania. I think my dad wanted me to stay in Texas, but his wife wasn't going to let me live with him anymore, so I couldn't really do that. I have a house that I can live in Pennsylvania, so I'm going up to Pennsylvania. And when I got there, I mean, it was great. I met the guy. His name, we'll call him Michael. It's not his real name, but we'll call him Michael. I mean, he was nice. His family was nice. He showed me around. And I lived in his room and slept in his bed with him. That was the only place that they had for me. I think they did have a spare room that was empty most of the time, but they had another family friend that came by occasionally and would take that room, so I just stayed with Michael in his room. And he had a big enough bed, he had a big enough room for us, so it wasn't that big of a deal. It did become an issue later on, but we'll get into that later. So, I mean, it was pretty good for a while. I was hanging out with Michael. We had what I considered to be a very brotherly relationship. We were doing a lot of things together. I was pretty much raised as an only child. I was separated from my siblings when I was very young. So I was kind of raised as an only child, and this was my first experience having somebody in my life that I could consider like a brother. And we did a lot of things together. He was a bird watcher, so he taught me a lot about birds. We'd go out hiking together. We'd go kayaking together. We'd go to different places and do different things together. We hung out with his friends and, arcades and escape rooms and, lots of good stuff that we did together. We also did drugs together. I taught him how to smoke weed. because his whole family actually was weed smokers, but he was like scared of it, I guess, and he had never done it before, but I guess I convinced him to try it, and he became a stoner. We smoked weed together, and then he got access to psychedelics. He got curious about psychedelics, and he figured out how to buy them, and we started doing psychedelics together. And honestly, I think that was the best thing that came out of this situation for me, was doing a whole bunch of psychedelics with this guy. And I did them on my own too. It was like a 1.5 year period where I was tripping maybe at least once a month, usually twice. I was doing it responsibly, medium to low doses. I did a high dose exactly one time, and that was enough for me forever. And, I would make sure that I got a tolerance break of at least a couple weeks to make sure that I wasn't wasting anything. And, we both together did our research, and we did it as responsibly as we could, as two young men experimenting with drugs can be responsible. But I got a lot of good things out of those drug experiences. I tried a lot of different ones and had a lot of different experiences. And overall, it was very positive for me. I think it really enhanced my mental health and my understanding of myself. And in general, it was a good thing. So this is the kind of relationship that I had with this guy, Michael. So me and Michael got a job together at the same place on the same shift. We worked third shift at a fast food place that was also a gas station and a convenience store. And, it was just a regular old retail job. It was stressful for me the whole time because I don't do well in retail. I was getting slowly burnt out over the whole time that I was working that job. But my roommate, Michael, was fine. He has no issue working those kinds of jobs, and that'll be relevant later. But we started paying rent, and we were the only two people in this household paying rent. I wasn't, like super social with his family. I was mostly just hanging out with him. I didn't have that much of an interest in getting to know his family. Mostly because I was just very like socially anxious and awkward and really, really shy at the time. So I mostly like kept to my room, or our room, right? I did have my own room briefly, and I'll talk about that later too, but I mostly just kept to myself, right? And they were asking me to pay rent. And this was a household that frequently had 7 or 8 people in it, and most of the time had at least 6. And me and Michael were the only two people paying rent. We also had the lowest paying jobs out of anybody there. So I felt this was kind of unfair. I was working slightly less hours than Michael, so I asked him to pay slightly more rent, and he was totally fine with that. I think he also found the rent situation a little bit unfair. In fact, he told me that his mom stole $2,000 from him one time. She was willing to steal $2,000 from her kid, which is crazy. I don't know what she needed it for. I think he told me that she was like behind on a mortgage payment or something, which is fine. If you're going to lose the house that everybody lives in, then sure, try to get some money. But I feel like stealing it isn't really the right answer there. It was the two heads of the household. It was their idea for us to pay rent and for nobody else to have to pay rent. And the other people that weren't paying rent were also family members, just like Michael was their son. They had another son and they had a daughter too. Neither of them were paying rent. And they had a family friend that was not related to them, like me, who also wasn't paying rent. So for some reason, I don't know why, but out of everybody in that household, only us, me and Michael, were paying rent. And it just seemed completely unfair. And I think Michael agreed, but he didn't want any conflicts or drama with his family. So let's talk about the other family members. So it was the mom and the dad. And Michael was one of their sons, their youngest son. And then they had 2 older kids. We'll call them Bobby and Jessica. And these 2 were at least 10 years older than me. That they were straight up children. And I could say they bullied me. There's no other word that I could use to describe their behavior toward me other than bullying. Which is bizarre to say about 2 people in their 30s, but they did what they did. They did things like stealing my mail, sabotaging my sleep. And again, I was a third shifter, so I was sleeping during the day. They would do things like, be outside my bedroom and intentionally make loud noises and open the blinds and the windows to let the light in there. And, they would just do things to mess with my sleep, essentially. They would tell lies about me. One time, I think Bobby thought he was being funny. And if we knew each other and if we were good with each other, then this would have been a funny, silly little prank. But he took my bike and put it on top of my car. And I had at the time a heavy electric bike. It was very heavy, and I'm a short guy, so it was kind of difficult for me to get that off of there without damaging anything. And like I said, if we knew each other, if we were chill with each other, that would have been really funny. But since we both knew that we didn't like each other, that was very clearly him just trying to be mean. And I'm sure he did it while he was drunk. He was an alcoholic. Deadbeat dad also. I mean, his kids came over every once in a while. He was divorced from their mom. But I never really saw them hanging out. And one time I was in the living room playing a video game, and his daughter came in because he wasn't around, and she was there to hang out with him, but she came in and started hanging out with me instead. She got real excited to hang out with somebody because her dad was like passed out drunk or something, I guess. I don't know. And there was this one time, I don't know exactly what happened, but again, his daughter was there, and he was passed out so badly that she couldn't wake him up. And it was like, afternoon, right? Maybe evening. It wasn't really that late. She was trying to wake him up, and he wouldn't wake up, and she thought he was dead. So she started screaming and crying. And this is like a young girl, like a 10-year-old girl. And that's the kind of interactions that I witnessed them having, that I witnessed Bobby having with his kids. So that's the kind of person that we're dealing with, right? Jessica, not a whole lot better. She was formerly addicted to pills, which, great job getting over that addiction. That's really amazing. But I think that she had some sort of bitterness toward me because I very clearly wasn't interested in like a traditional life or anything. And she got over her pills addiction, married a guy, bought a house, and is still not happy. I think that was what her issue was, is that she like achieved the dream and she still wasn't happy. And then she saw this young guy come out of nowhere and have kind of a shitty life and still be pretty like okay for the most part. So she had to find ways to make me unhappy, which she did. she and Bobby made me very unhappy in that place. And I brought this up. I brought this up with Michael, and I asked him to talk to his parents about it. And I think I talked to his dad about it a couple times. And the solution was basically like, that's not really acceptable behavior, what they're doing to you. But they just, I don't know. They didn't do anything about it. The dad said he would talk to Bobby, and maybe he did, but nothing came of it. So again, I think, even when I talked to Michael about this, he sort of understood. He was like, they're being really shitty to you, but again, I don't want any problems with my family, right? I don't want to cause any drama or anything. So nobody was really like standing up for me, and they just all kind of let the bullying continue and basically told me to just get over it, and also to do more chores, and pay more rent. And another thing is that they asked me to do chores in rooms that I didn't even use. Like, I love cooking. I've mentioned that on this channel before. I love cooking. I love having a kitchen. But because of the bullying I was facing with Bobby and Jessica, I wasn't comfortable being in most of the house for the majority of the time that I lived there. I used the kitchen a couple times, like a handful of times. And then I stopped using it because I felt if I went out there to cook, I would be, trapped in the kitchen cooking for like 30 minutes or until the dish is done. And maybe Bobby would come up the stairs drunk and start saying shit about me, trying to get me to, talk to him and get into an argument and instigate something. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. So I just completely stopped using the kitchen. I was the one that kept avoiding the conflicts as much as I possibly could with Bobby and Jessica by basically just, I was trying to be as nice as I could to them, basically just ask them to be nicer to me And they just kept doubling down. I was trying to, take the high road and say, let's talk to the family about this, see if I could talk to them even. But every time I talked to, I talked to Bobby once about it, and I talked to Jessica another time about it. Like, why don't you like me, is what I asked her. And she basically said, when we first met, you gave me a weird look and you made a weird face. And I was like, I went back in my memory to the first day we met, and like Michael introduced us, and I was sitting in the kitchen, and I was just like, I just smiled and waved, and I said hello. Like, that is how you greet people. And she was like, you gave me a look, and you made a weird face. It's like, I'm just shy. Like, I'm just kind of shy. Like, did you expect me to jump up and shake your hand and be like, oh my God, the famous Jessica, it's so good to finally meet you? Like, no, I'm not gonna do that shit. I'm just like, hello, good to meet you, right? Like, so she came up with some bullshit reason why she didn't like me when I asked her why she's so mean to me. And Bobby was no better. When we had that conversation, I was in the kitchen, right? And he came in and started instigating, and I don't really remember everything that he said because I'm sure he was drunk. And he was like, and I was just like, can we not just be like, talk about this stuff? Like, why do you have to be so petty and do all this like petty bullshit, like, messing with my sleep and all that? Like, why don't you like me? Like, what is the problem here? I'm paying rent, I'm nice to everybody. He was like, you don't do chores, you don't, and I just like couldn't understand his reasons. Like, I did keep my space clean. I'm not exactly the cleanest person, but my strategy is to kind of let a mess build up to the point where I can clean it in about 10 minutes, right? So if I have like a couple dirty dishes and some empty water bottles in my space, I'll clean it up tomorrow probably, right? It's not going to be there for very long, but I'm not like on top of keeping everything clean all the time. That's just not my strategy. But I'm also not disgusting and nasty like they seem to think I was. They were also upset that I wasn't doing chores. Right. And I did chores at first. I was doing the dishes and, vacuuming and helping out with their chickens and stuff like that at first. But again, after a while, I became uncomfortable being anywhere in the house that wasn't my own isolated space. I'll do chores in your house if I'm living there and I'm paying rent. I'll do chores if I use the room, right? But I've stopped using the kitchen, which I would love to be in there. I would cook for the family, I'd cook for people, but I don't want to be up there cooking a meal and have some rude asshole come up and start harassing me. So I'm not using the kitchen, I'm not making it dirty, I'm not cleaning your dishes for you. I'm not sweeping your floors for you anymore. I'm paying you rent, which nobody else in this house is paying except for the other guy that has a low-paying job. All of this just seems so unfair. And at some point I was like, I know I'm a guest in your home, but at what point does it become like I'm paying your mortgage here, right? Like, and I'm not, and like your family is being inflammatory and rude to me and fucking me up, fucking up my mood and my sleep and everything. And at some point it's like, I don't feel like they deserve my gratitude in terms of giving me a place to sleep and live anymore, because at some point I'm like, I'd rather just, the only reason I wasn't leaving is because I was scared of being homeless again. I don't have that fear anymore, but at the time I was really scared of being homeless again, because I'd only been homeless in my car for like a year, and I was like, I really need stability. I really need a place to be. But this family was not it. They just really didn't like me. So, briefly, I did have my own bedroom, sort of. Me and Michael both got tired of sharing a bed, and neither of us wanted to sleep on the floor. Or, well, he was willing to sleep on the floor, but I didn't want him to sleep on the floor. I was like, no, we gotta figure something else out here. There's this room that's right next to our bedroom that is vacant for the majority of the time. Can this family friend sleep on the couch when she's here, right? Or can she share a room with somebody else so that I can have this room that's unused most of the time? And so I used that room for a little while. And then they arranged for me to use the basement. Basement was mainly being used for like storage, and it had the fireplace down there, which heated the whole house in the wintertime. And they were like, as long as you tend the fireplace in the winter, you can have the basement. And I was like, I'm cool. Yeah, I love tending a fireplace. I'll sit by the fireplace all day and tend the fireplace. So they gave me half of the basement. It was really more like a third of the basement, but what it was just basically one side. It was this long rectangular room with the fireplace in one and the door on the other side, and I got like just a third of it. The third that didn't have a window and that had a giant hole in the wall exposing the fiberglass insulation. So Michael helped move. Actually, he did the majority of the work because I didn't want to touch anybody's stuff without permission. But he moved Jessica's stuff that she had stored in the basement to the other side of the basement. Didn't, do anything bad to it. Just moved it from one side of the basement to the other side of the basement. And she flipped out about this. She was real upset about this because she thought I moved it, and she was like, "You touched my stuff without permission." I was like, "I didn't touch any of your stuff. That was your brother that did that. And if you have an issue with it, you can take it up with your parents who approved this decision, and also him who did the thing. So, don't get mad at me." But apparently she was mad at me because I touched her stuff. Since it was, since there was only 3 walls in this area, I basically moved the furniture in such a way that it would create sort of a half wall, right? I had the bed in a corner, and then the foot of the bed facing the rest of the room, and then I put a big wardrobe next to the foot of the bed, so it would kind of continue that line. And the wardrobe was tall, it went almost up to the ceiling. It created something of a wall. And then what I did was I filled the rest of that space with blankets that I hung from the ceiling, blankets and towels and stuff. And I was trying to do this because there was a giant window on the other side of the basement that let light in, and I'm trying to sleep during the day, so I need darkness. And I've tried sleeping masks for this before, but they tend to slip off of my face. They make me itchy. They're uncomfortable. It does not aid my sleep. I mean, I could pull a beanie over my head and over my eyes, and that's pretty good, but that makes my face hot. That makes my head hot. I wake up with a sweaty neck. I just can't cover my face while I'm sleeping. That's not something that I can do. And sleep well. But I also needed darkness because I was a third shifter. I was sleeping during the day. So I put up these blankets and towels hanging from the ceiling to cover up the rest of the space and create something of a privacy wall, and also create some darkness in there. And I removed the light bulbs. There were 4 or 6 light bulbs in the basement, and I only removed the 2 that were in my area, so that when you turn on the light switch, you can still use the light in the rest of the basement. And Jessica actually came in to this area several times, and she stood on my bed to put colored light bulbs into the place where I had removed the light bulbs, even though she wasn't, that was my room, right? That's my bedroom. And I put up these walls. You're not going to see your colored light bulbs when they're on my side of the basement. So I took them out and I put them right outside of my room, right in the basement on a beanbag, all safe. I didn't break them, I didn't steal them or anything, and she accused me of stealing them because she couldn't find them. I guess she went back into my private space and looked for her light bulbs as she stood on my bed to put in place, and she couldn't find them, and she just immediately was like, "Oh, he stole them from me." It's no, they're right there. Just use your eyes. They're right. I put them right where you can find them easily, because I don't want them in my space. I took the light bulbs out so I would have darkness in here so I could sleep. I forgot to mention here, the blanket wall didn't even work to block all the lights. So anytime they turned the lights on or opened the blinds, it would still wake me up. So Jessica got over the light bulb thing as soon as she realized she could still mess with me that way. This is another example of the ways that both of them were trying to sabotage my sleep as much as they could. One time Bobby came down in the basement while I was sleeping, and he started just whirring his drill, just making his drill go just over and over again. And I woke up and I sort of, I moved one of my door blanket out of the way, the blanket I was using as a door. I moved it out of the way and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was sitting there just testing my drill. And this man thinks I'm stupid. He thinks I've never done, used a drill in my life. And I'm like, can you test it somewhere else? You don't have to test a drill. First of all, I know that's not a real thing. What are you talking about, test your drill? You're just making it go over and over again. What is that testing? What are you doing? That's not testing anything. You're putting different bits in it. Okay, whatever. Go to the garage where the rest of your tools are and do it there where I can't hear you. Like, it was very obvious that he was trying to fuck with me, right? By doing this kind of thing. And he's just saying, oh, I'm just testing my drill. At one point, this was the only physical altercation that we got into, but Jessica had been opening the blinds repeatedly while I was trying to sleep, coming in and out of the basement, stomping her feet and messing with her stuff in her corner, presumably not really doing anything important, but pretending that she was so that she could mess with me. And I did my best to use the blankets and the towels to block out the light and everything. But for the most part, I would have preferred if the blinds stayed closed, and if she had to do anything important with her storage, that she could do it during the daytime hours that I wasn't sleeping, or using like her phone flashlight or something. And I asked her to do that. I was like, can you just use a flashlight? And she was like, well, I gotta see better. I'm like, okay, well, I gotta sleep better. So we're at an impasse here, right? If you want me to keep paying your mom's mortgage, you better let me sleep so I can go to work and be happy. But no, that's not, she would open the blinds, and eventually I was going to sleep. So I left a very polite note. I was like, the light wakes me up, makes it difficult for me to sleep, which makes it difficult for me to work. Please keep the blinds closed from now on, please. I was very nice. It was a very politely worded note. And I went to sleep. The blinds were open again, and I woke up, and I went outside, and I saw the note crumpled up on the floor outside of my bedroom. And I picked it up, and I was like, oh my God. And I whispered kind of under my breath. I was like, that bitch, right? I don't call people bitches. I don't insult people that way often, right? I mean, they really have to deserve it for me to go to that length. I'm a cursor. I curse like a sailor, but I don't curse at people as an insult, right? I don't call people bitches or assholes or things like that seriously very often, right? I might do it as a joke, but I don't seriously consider people that way until they really piss me off. And so after asking her very nicely, repeatedly, just to let me sleep, and leaving a very politely worded note that she crumpled up on the ground, I just said, that bitch. What a bitch, right? I deserve that. I deserve to call somebody a bitch for that, right? But her brother, Bobby, came out of his bedroom across the hall. Apparently he heard me, and he was smoking a cigarette indoors. And he was like, what did you just say about my sister? You can't talk that way about my family. And he came up in my face. And this guy is like 6'4", a whole foot taller than me. I'm a very short, small person, and I am a pacifist. I've never hit somebody in my life. I've never aimed to hurt somebody in my life. But he came up in my face, and I sort of raised my arms because, I've taken martial arts and self-defense classes, and I know, you got to protect your face. So I'm getting into like a boxing position in case I have to block him about to punch me. And he just pushed me over. He just right in my chest pushed me over. I fell on my ass, fell into a box, right on the corner of a box. It really hurt. Wasn't a big deal or anything, but I got up real fast, and I was like, okay, I gotta get out of here. So I called for his mom. I'm like, your fucking son is trying to hurt me. You got to do something about this. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this house anymore. I don't want to deal with these people. I'm just trying to sleep so I can get some sleep and go to work and pay these people's mortgage that they're making me pay for them. So, I was really frustrated. I'm pretty sure I just kind of left. And when I came back, I found out that his mom didn't believe that he hurt me. She didn't believe that he pushed me. He basically lied and said, no, I didn't do anything. In fact, he raised his hands like he was about to punch me. And I'm like, oh, well, I mean, that's because you were in my fucking face and I thought you were going to hit me. I wasn't going to hit you. I was blocking to make sure I didn't get hit. And then you pushed me, right? So, like, that's what happened. And he's telling his mom, no, I didn't touch him. He raised his hand. He was going to punch me. And she is delusional. His mom is delusional and believes that he cannot lie. She literally told me that to my face. She was like, he does not lie. Okay, damn. I am just, at that point, when she said that to me, I'm like, okay, I don't feel welcome here anymore. Like, I don't feel like giving these people any more money. I don't feel like giving these people any more of my time. I don't have anywhere else to go, but like, I gotta start thinking about getting out of here because this family fucking sucks. Like, they think they're such a normal family, but you've got an alcoholic son, you got a bitch for a daughter, you got another younger son that's so conflict avoidant he can't even handle any kind of criticism, and we'll talk about that too. But oh my god, I was just like, I'm done with this family. I gotta figure out some way to get out of here. The problem is that I didn't have anywhere to go, though. I would have had to go back to my car, and again, I was afraid of that. I really didn't want to end up homeless again. But another thing, after this actually happened a couple days after Bobby pushed me over, I went to work, and when I came home in the morning, my room was destroyed. He had come in and pulled all the blankets down and a bunch of stuff that I put on the walls as decoration too, and he took back his furniture that had been lent to me by his family because I couldn't afford my own, because again, I was paying their mortgage. And he stole some of my stuff too, claiming that it was his. And this really sucked. I mean, I came home and my roommate called me, Michael, he called me before I got home and told me what was happening. And when I got home, I just sort of like, I just kind of sat in the corner in my chair and just cried because it just sucked. I mean, I had never in my whole adult life had my own space like that before. I had a bedroom of my own when I was a kid, obviously, because I was an only child. But as an adult, I'd been couch surfing with other people, living, sleeping in other people's beds and in other people's houses and in my car. And this was the first time I had anything like a bedroom for myself as an adult. And I mean, I put decorations on the wall, I put up string lights, I moved all that furniture, I hung up those blankets. It was hard work making that space cozy and making it feel like it was mine. And I only had it for like 6 weeks, and then he destroyed it. And I had to move back into Michael's room and start sleeping in bed with him again. So my mental health was pretty bad before I got into this house. Obviously, I mean, I was homeless, I was struggling a lot, I was struggling with keeping a job and everything. When I got there, I mean, before I got there, before I even accepted Michael's offer to live with his family, I told him about this. I was like, I struggle with my mental health. I have like breakdowns and things like that all the time. Not all the time, but like 3 times a year at this point. And it can get pretty scary to witness, and it's not great to be around sometimes. So like, make sure that you and your family can handle that. And he was like, yeah, it's totally fine as long as you're trying to get better. And believe me, I was trying, but that was a lie. It's not enough to just try, especially when there's factors outside of my control, like people bullying me. There was stuff at work too. I mean, I was burnt out from work. At retail isn't fun. I managed to hold this job for 2 years. 2 years I held this job. That's incredible for me. If I hadn't been paying these people's mortgage, I probably would have quit before then, because I wanted to keep the job so I could keep paying rent, so I could keep having a place to live. And I coped by smoking a lot of weed and hanging out with my friend and having a good time anytime that I possibly could. But otherwise, I mean, I wasn't super happy at home because of the issues with the family. And I wasn't super happy at work. Michael was very conflict avoidant to a really bad degree, to the point where he couldn't take any criticism of any kind, and he just got so anxious. He told me that I gave him anxiety, but I'm pretty sure he had anxiety, and I maybe made it worse by asking him to have conversations with me that he did not want to have. Very important conversations though, like, how are we going to divide this bed up? Right? Like, what are we going to do about the fact that you come into my space when we're sleeping all the time? How are we going to deal with communicating with your family? Because I don't have any power against them. When I talk to them, it doesn't work. So you're my only like hope. But he didn't want to talk to his family. And he didn't get burnt out from his job as far as I know. I mean, maybe he was, and that was also a source of anxiety, but he just loved working. It was so annoying to me because he couldn't understand that I was struggling with the same job, that it was, you know, I had slightly less hours, but they were still scheduling me for like 38 hours a week, which means I was essentially working full time, but not getting any benefits from it. He just could not understand that I was unhappy, or like why. And the shift that came after us, for first shift, they always came in late. And I kind of get it, right? Because you're coming in at 6 a.m., right when the breakfast rush is happening. You probably just woken up, you're probably sleepy and grumpy, and you don't want to come out and do all that intense like kitchen and cashier work right at the beginning of your shift. So they would come in and they would stay in the back room and just chill out and not even, well, some of them I'm sure would clock in, but they wouldn't come out to work for like 15, 30 minutes. And I didn't appreciate this because, I mean, I respect my time and I want to help my coworkers, but I do my best during my shift. And once it's time to hand over the shift, we hand it over. It's not my responsibility to take care of, because if we were doing breakfast rush as well for them, right? I mean, we're supposed to clock out at 6 a.m. Breakfast rush happens from around 5:30 to 6:30. So the shift change happens right in the middle. I get it. That's kind of tough. Not my fault. Talk to the managers about it. Talk to the people that make the schedule, because it's not my responsibility to handle this. When it's 6 a.m., I'm clocking out and I'm leaving. You get paid for every 15 minutes extra you stay. I don't care about that extra money over my own mental health. I'm leaving when it's time for me to leave. And if we were covering the 6 a.m. breakfast rush, we would have handled a late dinner rush at night, also usually around a 2 or 3 a.m. rush when a whole bunch of other third shifters come and get their lunch, and also the breakfast rush. So that's the 3 rushes. We're talking third shift, middle of the night, and we're still dealing with high customer flow, and we're staffed less. We only have 2 to 3 people on staff, whereas the other shifts get 4 or 5. So you've got like 4 people in the back room just hanging out while 2 of us are trying to handle a whole breakfast rush. That's not fair, and it's not right, and I'm leaving when it's time for me to leave. But my roommate, Michael, would stay. He wouldn't clock out until everybody else was clocked in, and until the place was like taken care of, as if he owned it, as if it was his small business that he was doting over caringly. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. And I tried to explain to him it would be better for literally everybody if you had some self-respect and just clocked out on time and didn't enable their behavior like that. It would be better for everybody. And I was his ride because he couldn't drive and he was too anxious to learn how to drive. So I drove him everywhere. And I couldn't leave until he left. So I would clock out and I would go into my car and I would look like an asshole sitting there, you know, trying to leave on time. And he would be in there, you know, for 15, 30 minutes extra making me wait. And I brought this up to him. I was like, I don't appreciate that. I mean, I understand you want to be nice and you want to help them, but they're not nice to us. And the thing is, I talked to management about this multiple times. I even talked to the first shifters about this. I was like, can you guys please just come and start the work on time so we can go home on time, because we've been here all night. We're tired. We need to get some sleep. Being third shift is not easy. You know, we only have 2 people on staff. You guys can handle this rush a lot easier than we can. It would be a lot less work for you, right? I tried to talk to people about this and management didn't want to do anything about it. And first shift started making fun of me and making jokes about me behind my back. So, and my roommate, Michael, he didn't want to leave on time either. So I was just, you know, I'm trying to advocate for myself and have some self-respect here. And nobody in my life at the time gave a shit, basically. That's kind of the vibe that I got from the whole situation, is that, like, I'm just trying to get some rest, make some money, try to save some money, try to see how long I can hold this job for, how much I can tolerate this shit. And I'm struggling with it and nobody gets it. And like, I'm getting bullied by these grown-ass adults that have probably better things to do than bully some guy that's just trying to get by in life, right? So like, I'm struggling from like all corners, except for the fact that me and Michael had a decent friendship, and that we were like brothers, and we went hiking and kayaking and bird watching and foraging for plants, and we did drugs together. that was like my saving grace at the time, was my friendship with Michael. Even though we had our problems, still the good times were good, and that sort of made up for it for a time. And then I did something really stupid. I offered Michael a friends with benefits proposition. I've always been kind of a lonely person, but in this case, I was just physically lonely. I just wanted some physical intimacy, and I knew that Michael was gay, and I'm open. I don't have really any kind of sexual romantic preference. So I offered him a friends with benefits thing, and I sat him down and we talked about it. I wanted to do this like the right way, right? This is my first time trying anything like this. I mean, I'd had casual experiences before, but I wanted to sit him down, and because we were good friends, right? We had been friends for, a good like year and a half up until that point. And I wanted to sit him down and talk boundaries and set some guidelines and see, do it properly. We're not dating. We're not boyfriends. We're not dating. This is just a friends with benefits thing. We're going to try it out. And to be quite honest, I'm probably not going to enjoy it. Like, I think I told him that, actually. I think I did tell him that, like, I'm probably not going to like it all that much. I'm probably just going to try it out and see what it's like. And we probably aren't compatible. I kind of had a sense. But I was lonely. I was desperate for some physical intimacy. I mean, I've been sleeping in the same bed as this guy. We had no privacy from each other. It was very difficult to get our needs taken care of separately. So I was like, we're like very close to each other. But I found out he was romantically interested in me probably the whole time that we knew each other. And that recontextualized my whole friendship with him. And I found this out because we had sex a couple times, and I told him, I'm not really into it. Let's end this. But before I told him that, he went to our manager at work, who is a friendly guy, real nice, real nice guy. And he was our manager at work. And I mean, he told him, I guess, that we were dating or something. And I found out because my manager came up to me while I was at work, and he was like, so, I heard you and Michael are a thing now. And I was like, what do you mean a thing? What did he tell you? And I had to go to Michael and sit him down again and go over the boundaries of our relationship and say, I told you we're not dating. What part about that did you not understand? And I tried to be nice about it. I don't think I was like yelling at him and scolding him, but I was pretty firm. I was like, that you can't be doing that. That is an explicit break of my trust, because you can't go around telling people that we're a thing and that we're dating and all that. Pretty sure by the way my manager spoke to me that Michael basically went to him and was like, I got a boyfriend finally, yay, my first boyfriend. And yeah, I was Michael's first time. I talked to him about this too. I was like, this is going to be a purely casual thing for me, so if you're looking for a deeper connection for your first time, this is not it. And you got to make sure that you're willing to give up your first time to some casual experience with a friend, because that's what it is. That is what it is, and you have to think about it that way. But apparently he thought it was more special than I thought it was, and he told this to our manager, and our manager came up to me, and I had to be like, no, that's not what's going on. I don't know why he would say that. So that, on top of the fact that neither me or Michael really enjoyed the sex all that much, to be honest with you, I ended it. I was like, yeah, no, we're not doing this anymore. It was worth a try. No hard feelings, right? Like, we could move on and still be friends. But that you did something weird, and I didn't like it. And it wasn't enjoyable anyway, so that's it, right? So this is when Michael started distancing himself from me. And this is when I realized that the entire time, pretty much, probably, that we knew each other, he was just trying to get my pants. He was just trying to be my boyfriend. And once he found out that that wasn't going to happen and that wasn't going to work, he started to distance himself from me. And I wanted to still be friends, right? I mean, he was my only in-person friend. I had some internet friends. I always have internet friends. But he was my only in-person friend. He was the person I was the closest to. And to realize that he didn't think of us the same way, that he didn't think of our relationship the same way, and now that there was no longer a promise of like a future as being boyfriends together, it seemed like he didn't see any worth in me anymore. And so he started to distance himself from me, and he found other friends very quickly. Within a week, he found a boyfriend on Grindr and started going on dates with his boyfriend on Grindr and having much better sex with that guy, which, like, congratulations, right? I was happy for him, but I expressed a lot of disappointment and upset because he wasn't really trying to get me, like, involved with his friends or anything. It was really like he was just distancing himself, right? Like, he was replacing me with a whole bunch of other people, and we weren't hanging out anymore. And I kept asking him to hang out. I was like, let's hang out together, you know, bring me along. I mean, go on your dates, right? Go on dates, but, like, you have other friends, right? You and your boyfriend have mutual friends now. Why not bring me along, right? You enjoyed being my friend for all this time. Why can't I still be friends with you, right? Why are you going off with these other people and leaving me alone with your family that doesn't like me? And I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anybody else to hang out with. I don't have anything else to do. So I'm just sitting at home playing video games in Michael's bedroom on Michael's laptop while Michael's off with his boyfriend and his new friends. And I'm just getting lonelier and lonelier by the day, and more stressed out and feeling more and more unwelcome. And I'm starting to think back to all of the nice, fun experiences I had with Michael and how close I felt with him, and feeling very, very burned and bitter that he would just kind of throw me away like that because I don't want to date him. And I'm sure any women watching this video can probably relate somewhat to this. I'm sure many of you have had a similar experience, and it really sucks. It does genuinely really suck when somebody you thought you were friends with, you thought you could get along with, you realize that they only were interested, they had ulterior motives, basically. They had other motives, and they had another context in their mind of all of the time that you spent together. So, I mean, what's going on here? It's coming toward the end of my time in this household. I moved here thinking that I was going to live with a kind family and a good friend, a bunch of stoners that were chill, and that, you know, they maybe make me pay some rent, but it turns out they're making me pay more rent than I really should be paying for how many people are in this house that could also be paying rent. Turns out the mother is delusional about her kids and thinks that they can do no wrong, but she's also willing to steal from them to pay her mortgage. And my roommate, who I thought was like a brother to me, is just wanted to date me, and now he's distancing himself from me, and I'm being bullied by his brother and sister, who are both grown-ass adults, and they have the whole family in their back pockets, and I'm just starting to feel very unwelcome. My bedroom was destroyed after I worked so hard to get it set up, and I quit my job. And this was the worst walkout I've ever done, because I pretty much lost control of my body. I was at work, and I was extremely depressed. I couldn't shake the negative thoughts. I was sluggish. I could barely move. And it got to the point where I just started walking toward the back room. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I gotta keep working. I gotta get through this day. We're only like an hour and a half into it, but I gotta get through this night, through this shift, and I can go home and rest. But then, I gotta do it again tomorrow, and I'm scheduled for the next 3 days, and I was just, just having a really bad time, and I couldn't think of anything positive whatsoever. And so I just started walking into the back room involuntarily, and I sat down, and I entered what I can only describe as a catatonic state. I couldn't talk, I couldn't move, I just stared blankly at nothing into the distance, eyes unfocused, and I just kind of sat there and stared, unmoving. And in my head, I was like, what's happening right now? Like, I gotta go to work. I know I'm tired, but I can lean against the counter. I gotta get up and work. My manager's gonna come back here and tell me to get up and work. And he did. He came out and he said, you gotta go to work, man. Hey, get up, you gotta go to work. And then he left, and then he came back 5 minutes later and he said it again, like, what's going on? You gotta go to work. And eventually, I think he sort of realized that something was wrong, and he started trying really hard to get me to talk, but I just couldn't. I was listening to him, I was hearing him, I was responding in my head. I was like, I know, I gotta get to work, but I'm so fucking tired. It's like, I can't think of anything positive. And I was just sort of like not in control of my body. It was like a rock. like a big heavy stone. My whole body was. And he couldn't get me to talk, and then eventually I pretty much I burst into tears, and I got up and I left. I went out to my car and I sat in my car and I just cried for like 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's me quitting my job. I can't do this anymore. I'm out, right? I'd taken all my sick days, and this was the one where if I had taken another day off, I would lose my job. So I was like, okay, if I walk out, I'm gonna get fired. It's not even me quitting, right? It's basically like I've run out all of my attendance points. And I realized before I could go home that I had to get some gas. So I pulled up to the gas pump, and while I was pumping the gas, my manager came out, and he was nice. He tried to talk to me. He was like, you seem really stressed out, and like, honestly, man, you're better than this. Like, you don't need this job. Go out there and find something better. You don't need this retail stuff anymore. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do though. Like, I live with this shitty family, you know, Michael doesn't fucking like me anymore. He wanted to get my pants the whole time, and now he's distancing himself, and his family continues to bully me, and I don't feel welcome in that house anymore. But the only other place I have to live is my car, and I don't really want to do that. I don't have any other job prospects or any other way to make money. Like, what am I gonna do? But obviously I can't stay here because I'm so stressed and burnt out from the job and from the interpersonal things in my life. And I'm still co-workers with this guy that doesn't like me and is distancing himself. I'm still driving him into work every day and working with him every day. And like this, it just, like, everything just sucks. Everything just sucks right now. And that was the beginning of the end when it comes to my place in that household. Because I quit my job, and so I was no longer able to pay their mortgage for them. And they gave me a month. They were like, you get a month to get another job and start paying rent again, or you're gonna have to find somewhere else to live. And at that point, it was very clear to me that they didn't really care for me to stay, that pretty much all of them just wanted me to leave. And I mean, Bobby had pretty much told me as much during one of our arguments. He was literally he literally said, just go, just leave, just get out of this house, just get away from my family. And like, I don't understand, you know, what compels somebody to say something like that. I didn't do anything wrong to this family. They just wanted me to do more than I was willing to do for them. Like, you know, socialize even though I was being actively bullied, and pay their mortgage for them even though I was the lowest paid person in the whole household that had a job. And my sleep was getting sabotaged, my mental health was getting sabotaged by these people, and you know, like, I just wasn't in a good place. And they told me 1 month, get a job or you're out. Just absolutely no time for rest, recuperation, to, you know, just sort out my thoughts and try to get something positive in there. Just, they didn't give me any time for that. So I got a job at a metalworking place, and I stayed there for 2 weeks before that got too stressful too. And I think they gave me another month. And then I had a severe mental breakdown. This was the worst one I've ever had. This wasn't like a catatonic state. This was like depersonalization, derealization. I receded into myself, right? I was no longer in control of my body again, but instead of just sitting down like a rock, I had energy, and I was angry because I wasn't being respected. I was being disrespected from all angles. And I just entered like fight or flight mode. I was like, I'm in danger. This place, this environment, this life situation that I'm in is dangerous for me somehow. And everybody's trying to gaslight me into thinking that I'm doing the wrong thing. It was just like too much. It was just too much. And I punched a hole in their wall, and I screamed at Bobby. He screamed at me. And I remember I was standing on the stairs, and he was at the bottom of the stairs. And it was a short flight of like 8 stairs. And his face was perfectly within kicking distance. I could have kicked his teeth in. I could have kicked his nose in. I could have broken his face. I could have kicked him. He would have fallen over. I could have got on top of him and started beating him like a chimp. And every cell in my body was screaming out for me to do that, to get violent with this guy that had caused me so much grief over these past 2 years. And instead I just screamed at him, and then I left. They called the cops. A police officer came in. I locked myself in a room, and then I climbed out the window and I got in my car and I drove away. And I drove to the train tracks, just waiting for a train to come by. That was my go-to method, basically. Anytime I decide I'm gonna do it, like this is finally it, I go to the train tracks and I wait for a train. And that is usually enough to stop the impulse. That's why I do it that way, because if I had a more immediate way of doing it, then I might have done it by now. Instead, I go to the train, and just waiting for a train to come by is enough time usually. And while I was waiting, I ran out of cigarettes, so I started driving up to a gas station to get some cigarettes, and the cops found me. And I was still really pissed off, really upset, and not really fully in control of myself. And I got into a brief police chase. Believe it or not, this car that I live in was in a police chase. Very brief. I just sort of popped up onto the sidewalk to get around the traffic, and I didn't want to hurt anybody, so I was actually going fairly slowly. It didn't last very long. I just got kind of down the road a little ways, and then I pulled into a parking lot, and I got out of my car. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I guess I'm going to jail, or I'm going to the hospital or something right now. So I got out of my car. I was like, I don't want to actually be in a police chase right now. It was so brief. I drove away from the police, and then they, turned on the lights and everything. And I was like, oh my God. That kind of sobered me up, so to speak. Like I kind of snapped. I wasn't on drugs, but it sobered me up, right? I was snapped out of it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a police chase right now. I don't want to do this. What's happening? What's going on? How did it get to this point? So I pulled over. I got out of my car. I was tackled by a police officer. He pulled on my jacket, started choking the hell out of me. And then once he realized he was choking me, which I was fine with because I wanted to die, to be quite frank, I really did want to die. And I was like, if this guy's going to kill me, fine, sure, let a cop do it. Absolutely. But as soon as he realized, he let go, and he put his knee on my back, and they were pushing my face into the dirt, and I was spitting grass out. There was 8 cops around me. I was spitting grass out of my mouth and dirt out of my mouth because they were pushing my face into the ground. And they told me to stop spitting at them, and I was like, bro, I'm spitting out grass because you're pushing my face into the ground. And all of them got kind of quiet. And I mean, I'm belligerent, right? I was screaming, I was crying, I was like, just let me die. Why are you doing this? Why do I have to be here, etc.? Worst breakdown of my life, right? It's surreal to think about the fact that was me, because I mean, you can see me right now. I'm a normal looking person. You wouldn't think that I could be found, surrounded by 8 cops screaming and crying about how I want to die. Just by looking at me, you wouldn't realize that that's a thing that I've been through. But I was there in the center of that situation, in the center of that experience. I felt that it was all completely unfair. Like, if people had just treated me more nicely, then none of this would be happening. And now here I am, wanting so badly to just die, because I feel like I'm not welcome anywhere, because I feel like no matter how much work I do, even if I can manage to keep a job for 2 years, if I'm unhappy in that job, then I'm just a lazy complainer. And if I can't handle it anymore, then I am, just a guest in the house, and I still have to pay rent, so I gotta get a job. And it's like I thought that I was coming to this place to get some help and companionship, and then all of that just kind of fell apart slowly over the course of about 2 years, and then all at once. So I was in the worst mental state of my life. Even up until this point, 4 years later, I'm still never experienced something like that. And I mean, it was all over for me. I wasn't thinking about the future. I wasn't thinking about the rest of my life or anything. I was like, I don't have a life. If somebody can offer me a place to live, can do something so gracious for me, and then I can somehow fuck it up so badly that they kick me out like this, I was thinking, I can't hold a job. I get too stressed out. I'm not good enough. I don't like doing chores, apparently, which isn't true. I like doing chores. It's just I didn't want to do chores in rooms that I didn't use. Right? And if you wanted that issue to be fixed, then you could have talk to your son and daughter about their behavior regarding bullying me, and then if they had been nicer to me, then I would have been nicer to the family. But it was all on my shoulders to be the good person in that situation. And because I stood up for myself and wanted some self-respect and wanted to talk these things out with people, but I mean, I sometimes didn't have the words, and I mean, I was sometimes really anxious and shy about it, and I got scared, and like, these people have all the power over my life right now. If they kick me out, my name isn't on a lease or anything. They don't have to evict me. I'm just giving them cash every month, right? So they have all the power. They can just straight up kick me out and not allow me to come back if I don't pay them and be nice to them, even though they're not nice to me. So I was the one that faced all the negative consequences of just trying to stand up for myself and set some boundaries. And the consequence I faced is that I went to the hospital for 2 weeks, and when I got out of the hospital, I had no home, and I had to move back into my car. So, I mean, that really messed me up. I took all of those psychedelics during this time, and ultimately, eventually, those experiences helped me because I came to some realizations. I did a lot of heavy introspection whenever I was tripping, which is the key to making good insights and to actually having a therapeutic effect with psychedelics. I've always advocated for myself to the point where other people have not liked it. I can't say that I've always had great emotional regulation or that I've always been able to word things well and set boundaries in a nice way. I can't say I've always been perfect at that, but throughout my entire life, when people are expecting too much from me and not respecting me, it's always me that faces the negative consequences. Just because I get stressed out because I have trouble socializing and because I don't want to work a traditional job, and because I need rest sometimes near the end of it when I quit my job, because I mean, involuntarily, it was essentially my body quit my job for me because it couldn't handle it anymore. I was present, but I could only observe until I got outside to my car and started pumping gas. I was just like in the back seat. So I didn't even really want to quit my job, but I literally could not handle the stress to the point where my body was like, we're out of here. If you're not going to quit, I'm quitting because this is unsafe. It's not safe for your mental health. You're so stressed out, you're going to have a fucking stroke or a heart attack or something. And so, I mean, I'm dealing with that, and they tell me, and also bullying, and also the delusional mother, and the people not dealing with their family members being fucking rude to me. I'm dealing with all of that, and they tell me you have 1 month to get a job again so you can start paying our mortgage again. After I got kicked out of that place, it was a lot of just trying to figure out like what went wrong. Like, whose responsibility was it to fix that situation? And why was I the one that got the short end of the stick, right? Did I really behave that badly? Right? Were my mental health issues really that severe to the point where it disrupted that family so much that they turned to bullying me to try to drive me out? What did I do wrong? Right? And when I think about it, I mean, I wasn't perfect. Obviously, nobody's fucking perfect. Like I said, I've had emotional regulation issues. I've had issues with communication and socializing, which is why Jessica said, oh, you gave me a weird look. You made a weird face. It's just because I was shy. I didn't immediately stand up and shake her hand and do the like neurotypical thing in that situation. And I guess that made me a threat or a bad person or like an alien in their family or whatever they thought of me as. They just didn't like me. And slowly over time, the whole family, it started with Bobby bullying me. Nobody else really had an issue with me at first, because I was nice, I was polite, and I kept to myself, and I cleaned stuff up, right? Like I was doing chores and stuff in the beginning, like I said. But then Bobby started bullying me, and I started avoiding situations, avoiding other family members because he was around, and avoiding rooms and not doing chores because I wasn't using those rooms anymore, and getting stressed at work, and then the whole thing with Michael happened where it found out that he wanted a relationship with me, and then he started distancing himself, and it's like I feel like I just got the short end of the stick through all of that, and everybody around me was telling me somehow it was my fault because I should just deal with it, right? Like when I got there, or before I got there, like I said, I told Michael that I have a history of mental health issues and that sometimes, you know, I get upset. And he said, as long as you're trying to get better. And I was going to therapy. I was on medication that I did not like because of the side effects. I mean, I really was trying, and I was trying to set boundaries with people. I was trying to communicate properly with people. I wasn't doing it perfectly. The point is, I was trying to do things right. I was really, really, really trying to get things in order because I thought this was my chance, right? I didn't want to be homeless my whole life. I didn't want to be homeless anymore. I had an opportunity, and I was like, I'm going to be nice to this family that has been so gracious to offer me a place in their home. And I was, and then they weren't nice to me. To this day, I'm still salty about it. I've come to terms with what I did do wrong in that situation. I mean, having a huge explosive breakdown and punching a hole in their wall wasn't great. I immediately offered to fix the wall because, again, I'm not in control in those situations. And I was pushed. There is a reason that happened. There is a very good reason that it escalated to that point. Whenever I have breakdowns like that, and again, that was the worst one, but whenever I get so upset, that's because I feel that I'm not being respected. And people don't want to talk about the boundaries that I want to set because they don't want me to have boundaries. They want me to just be able to be pushed around. They just want to push me around. They want to force me into a job I don't like. I offered so many solutions to the issues that I was having that would help me with my emotions. I offered so many solutions, and I tried really hard to work with those solutions. And I tried things that I didn't even want to do that I knew weren't going to work, like medication, because the family was urging me to do it. And none of it was enough. It just was not enough, and they wouldn't listen or understand my reasons for not doing things, like not doing chores because I felt I would be harassed if I was trapped in a situation. They weren't understanding, they didn't listen to me, they didn't take any consideration for me. After a while, by the end of it, it was basically like they just wanted me out, and they did not care. They did not care what kind of situation I was going to be in. So they felt, well, we'll give him a month, and if he doesn't have somewhere else to live, then that's his fault, right? That's his fault because he didn't find another place to live quickly enough. He needs to find a roommate, get another job, and find an apartment within a month. So, yeah. I'm a little salty about it. I don't understand why that family did that. I mean, I get that, like, Bobby and Jessica both have their own kind of mental health issues going on. So did Michael. He had anxiety. But again, he told me I gave him anxiety when all I was doing was trying to set boundaries and trying to get some self-respect. I understand they had a mortgage to pay, which is probably why they wanted me to pay rent, because they were afraid of losing their house. But you've got a household full of people working. Why are the two lowest paid people the ones that are paying rent? That doesn't make any sense. And I brought this up. I tried to discuss it with them, and there was no real answer. It was basically like, well, you're not really part of the family, so that's why you're paying rent. I'm like, okay, well, why is Michael paying rent when he is part of the family? And why is this other family friend not paying rent? Yeah, it was just a shit show. I don't even know how to conclude this story. Basically, I got sent to the hospital because of that big mental breakdown, and when I got out, I didn't have a place to live, and I had to live in my car, and none of them would talk to me, and I went back to living in my car. And after that is when my car broke down. The starter broke and it wouldn't start anymore, and I had to go a whole year with my car parked in one spot, walking through all kinds of weather conditions to get to the closest bathroom, to get food, to charge my phone and all that, and then just walking back to my car to sleep. And that was the year before I went to that transitional housing program that I talked about in my first two videos. All of this happened before I went to that transitional housing program. That's how I ended up homeless the second time, because I was offered a place to live, and then it ended up being a scam. Basically, they just took a bunch of my money and bullied me and kicked me out. So, yeah. That is that. That was a very long story. I'm hoping this video, once I edit it down, is going to be at least an hour. I'm hoping to make some longer videos. So anyway, that was that story. I hope it was entertaining. I hope you're as salty about it as I am. It's raining now, which is very appropriate. It's going to be raining all week. It really sucks because when it rains, my hammock gets wet. It leaks in through the gaskets. There's no way to seal the hammock when it goes over the top of my car like this. And my hammock gets wet in the rain, so I'm gonna have to sleep in my driver's seat for the next week while it's raining, which is super great. So I am fundraising for a van so that I can move out of this wet, stinky car and get into a home that is actually suitable for me, that I don't have to share with other people that don't give a shit about me. No mortgage to pay, no rent to pay in a van. I'm going to be much happier in that situation. I will leave a link to my van fundraiser in the description, as well as my Patreon. If you'd like to join my Patreon, there will be some exclusive content there later down the line. And if you donate $10 or more, you get a shout out in my next videos. And I'll also leave a couple places where you can do a one-time donation if you want to support me that way. I am homeless and I live completely off of donations right now. I'm trying to make some ad money on YouTube so I don't have to live completely off of donations. So if you liked this video, if you got anything out of it, please consider giving it a like. If you'd like to follow my journey as I move out of this little car and into a van, give the channel a sub, consider supporting me with the links down below. Is there any questions you have for me? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching and have a peaceful day.